Hello, my name is Tess McBurney, and I'm the Atlantic Bat Conservation Project Technician with the Canadian Wildlife Health Cooperative Atlantic Region. And today I'm going to go through instructions for creating a NABat project. So to start, you can see I am on the nabatmonitoring.org webpage, so you can type that in the search bar up here. Once on this page, you're going to click on the orange Partner Portal button at the top right of the screen. And that will take you to this new page where you can click the Login Request an Account button at the top right. So under Other Science-Based Accounts, you're going to put your username and your password and then select Login with Sciencebase below to log in. Great, so now you're logged into the NABat website. So if you don't already have a project created, it might automatically take you to the project page. But if not, if it took you to this page, here you have some different options. So you're going to select the projects option at the top of the page. And this will list all of your NABat projects. So once you create your project, you can go here and then click on the blue hyperlink to go to your project or the link. But right now we're interested in creating a new project. So you're going to click Add New Project, the button at the top right. So now we will have some fields to fill out. So I'm going to select Test Project because this project is just an example for this video, but you will not click that button if you're actually creating a project that you will upload data to. So you do not need to click that. So first you need a project name. So this can be whatever original name you think suits your project. I think it's always good to have the organization name. So I'm going to put CWHC and then NABat, the location. And that works. And this same project will be used to monitor the site for multiple years. So you don't need to put the year or anything like that. Then you will need to put a detailed description about your project below. They have a great example there if you want to follow that. So you'll want to put your survey types that you're planning on doing. Maybe you want to include a little bit about the habitat you'll be monitoring in. If you're monitoring maybe in like a provincial or national park, you can include that in there. However much detail you want to add is great for your little description. Below that, you need to include your organization or the organization that will own the data. So this is a drop down, so you can't actually add anything to this list. So that is not my organization. There it is. My organization is already here because we've already uploaded data to the website, but if your organization is not yet here, you will have to contact an NABat contractor or someone to add your organization to that list. So you can try Dane Smith. So Dane Smith at contractor.usgs.gov. For the spelling, you can look that up in our guide. So you need to contact them first before you can create a project because you need to have your organization listed there. Okay, so once that step is done, you can go down to the members section. So your name should already be here because you are the person creating this project and your organization gets added in automatically. The next column is project affiliation. So you have a drop down here where you can decide what members in your project have what roles. It doesn't matter what you put for these, although you will have to have at least one project leader. So if there's only one person on this project, they will have to be the project leader. Next to that, you have 4 permissions columns for different categories. So cell selection permissions, species list, deployment, and survey. So these drop-downs will decide how much access the person has to the different categories of data. So with full access, they can add cells, remove cells, change status. Limited access, they can't actually delete anything, they can't remove cells. Limited access, you could give them the option that they can only read the data, they can't actually change anything. And then no access as well, although I'm not sure why you would want to include someone in the list and then not give them any access. Okay, so as the project leader, I have full access to everything. That makes sense. So you would want to add a provincial coordinator to your project if you have one. So to add someone, you click the blue Add User button on the right. So our provincial coordinator is going to be Scott McBurney. He is the lead researcher on the project, and any provincial coordinator should have full access to all of these categories. So I've given him full access, but we also have someone else on this project, Jordi, as well. He is a biologist working on this project, but I'm only allowing him the ability to read the data. He can't actually change anything. Okay, so once that is done, you're going to go down to your grit selection area or section, I guess I should say. So here you have a few different options as well. So first is sample design. So likely you'll be picking the first selection, NABat. So basically you're just guaranteeing that your surveys follow the established NABat sample design, which is what we would encourage. However, another option that may be useful would be the NABat legacy option. So maybe you've already been monitoring a site for years prior to NABat or prior to using their sample design. And if you're uploading that data after the fact, you can select the NABat legacy option to indicate that maybe you weren't actually following the NABat sample design when those data were collected. So those would probably be your two best options here, but I'm going to select that we did follow the NABat sample design here. And for grid sample frame, you're going to want to select Canada 10 by 10 kilometer grid because we are in Canada. If you don't select that here, when we do a cell selection in the next step, the US might come up automatically on the map instead of Canada. So it's important to select that here to ensure that Canada comes up on the map. And then your next section would be data use and sharing agreement. So one of the benefits of NABat is that they use the uploaded data to internally conduct assessments of bat species across North America. So that's really helpful that they actually use the data for assessments. But you also have an option here as a new feature to have the data available for public access. So you have several different options here. Several of them are, or most of them are based on location information at different levels, like the grit cell level and the actual cave level, down to where the detector was placed. So for these, I would recommend selecting the negative options. So I do not consent or never do for now. So you would have to select that option unless you've already had a conversation with either provincial or federal government officials in that area responsible for at-risk bat species to see if they're willing to share the data publicly to some level. Because when you are talking about some of these locations like caves, that would be critical habitat for at-risk bat species, and that location information often should not be made available to the public for protection of bats. So for now, ensure that you're selecting never do for these options and I do not consent for the first option until you've had those conversations. But yeah, you need to get that permission before you can select anything else for these options under public access. Okay, so once you've selected all of that, you can hit the blue Proceed to Cell Selection button at the bottom left. Great, and we selected the Canada grid, so the Canada map popped up, so that's great, we did that right. So up here at the top is where you're going to start narrowing down what you want to look at. If you actually know the grid cell ID number, you can put that in the search bar, but I don't really know yet. Maybe I just want to look at the province before making any decisions. So under state filter, I'm going to select my province. It's still under state, but it does, if you have the Canada filter selected, it will be provinces and territories that show up here. So I'm going to select Prince Edward Island. So you can see it's blue, so it has the grid cell overlay, but we need to be able to zoom in to see it properly. So you can either just scroll using your mouse, zoom in or zoom out, or the plus button at the top left will zoom in, and the minus button will zoom out. But you can see once you start to zoom in, you can see the grid cell overlay there, so that's great. You can also filter it down to maybe the county level, which doesn't seem to be an option for Prince Edward Island, but you can add some other filters there, or if you want to start from scratch, you can clear the filters using this button. So I want to look at a few other things though before I make any decisions about my cell. So if you hit these gray stacked squares on the right, you can have some other options. It will let you pick what kind of map you want to look at. But some other handy layers would be the priority cells for your state or province. So this will show you the highest priority cells within that area. So clicking on those cells will be highlighted in green. So you can see there are a few priority cells for Prince Edward Island. You can also set a priority filter up here where you're looking at only a certain percentage of the top priority cells. There aren't many cells for Prince Edward Island, so I don't think that's necessary for here. So that's a handy selection. You can also, if you select the 5 kilometer grid cells, Alaska and Canada 5 kilometer grid cells, that can be useful too. I know it looks like a lot on the map, but it will divide the grid cells into the 4 quadrants, or the quadrants. So that way, if you're choosing where you are putting your 4 different detectors, you can see each quadrant on the map. So I find that useful, but I'm going to turn it off for now because it is a lot to look at. And you can also select which cells already have an NABat project. So I'm going to do that here. And they show up as blue pins. So that's helpful. If you hover over the blue pin or click it, it gives you the title, so that's useful. You don't want to select a cell that already has a project in it without consulting the individual in that project. So I probably don't want to choose this priority cell here. Okay, so those are a few different options, but you can play around and see if there's anything else that would be worth looking at there for you. Okay, so I'm going to just choose a cell randomly for this example. Perhaps like if you're monitoring like a certain protected area, you'll want to choose the cell that is in that particular area. But I'm just going to pick a high priority cell that's not being monitored. So I'm going to choose this one here. And the guide will discuss the cell selection process as well. I'm just not going to go through it at this stage. So double click on the cell that you're interested in. And it's just loading. And then you can see once I've selected a cell, it shows up here in this little table. So that cell ID is 6860, so that's great. So I'm interested in that cell. Let's say that your site actually, or the area you want to monitor spans 2 cells. Well, you can have 2 cells in one project. So I'm going to click this adjacent one as well. And you can see that they both show up now in the column, those 2 cells. Great. But let's just go back to just the first one. So you can click the red X next to the grid cell that you don't want to include in your project to remove it from the list. So we just have this one. And in that cell, you have to select the survey types that were conducted or that you are planning to conduct. So I'm going to say most times you'll want at least a stationary acoustic point survey. So next to these colored boxes at the top, you're going to select the survey type you're interested in. Okay, so once you do that, you see that it shows up in the table, Stationary Acoustic Point Survey. And then you have several options in the drop-down. So you have to have at least one survey type selected for survey, this option here, to save your project. If you don't have at least one survey type selected for survey, your project won't save, and you'll have to start from scratch. So make sure that you have at least one type of survey selected for survey initially, and you can always add or change things later. But we also decided we're going to have mobile transects and maybe emergence counts here. So I've selected all three of those next to these colored boxes. So if you use this bar to scroll, you can see your stationary, your mobile, and your emergence count. So maybe I actually can't do a mobile transect because there weren't roads within the area that fulfilled the necessary criteria. I can actually select that from this drop-down, not selected for survey, or perhaps I didn't have the resources to hire staff members or have volunteers conduct these surveys. You can select that as well. So you have different options here. So you can actually provide NABat with more information about why you couldn't conduct a survey at that site as well, that particular type of survey. So lots of options here, but we are going to select that we've conducted surveys for all of these options. So that's great. I'm going to select this grid cell again just to see, show you what it looks like to have two there. It's just loading. Great. And so now actually when I've selected that for specific survey types, you can see that cell is actually already being monitored by another organization with stationary acoustic point surveys. So I can't actually select that survey type for this site because it's already being monitored by another organization. So you would need to, you can click on this link here to get more information about the monitoring being done there, and also likely contact information like the email address for that individual, so you could contact them if you were interested in collaborating at that site. So I'm going to remove that again, and we're just going to stick with our one cell. Okay, so if for some reason all of these, you want to change, I guess, all of these selections you've made, you can reset by just hitting cancel up here to start from scratch, but I'm happy with everything I've selected, so I'm going to hit the green save button at the top right. Success. Great. Our cell selection was saved, so now we can go back to our project. Great. So all of our project information can be seen up here under details, like the description. If we want to change any of that, we can hit the green edit button at the top right, and we can edit these fields. Make sure you save after you edit, or cancel if you don't want to change anything. So you can make changes under all these tabs. So if you want to add or remove members, you can edit that here as well. Your data use and sharing, if you've discussed that with individuals and you've decided to change some of those, like your provincial or federal partners, then you can make those changes. We'll get to some of these other tabs in later videos, so I'm not going to go over those now. So that should be everything. If something happened and you've decided you just want to start over, that you want to delete this whole project, you can hit this red trash can button here to delete the project. It will ask you if you're sure, and you hit delete if you want to delete, or cancel if not. So that is how you create an NABat project. The project title will be over here on the left. Great. I hope that was helpful.